I'm not anxious to like, be old and then consequently die. That I'm not any more anxious for that than anyone else. But I feel like we're sort of taught that we grow old and celebrate our glory years of 18 to 30. And I was getting to know people who were living out the later and last years of their life, and I was doing it without the overlay of my own mortality being so mixed up in it.
Folks, please welcome David Greenberger. I was looking through all the magazines, the Duplex Planet magazines, and I was wondering what inspired this whole thing? Why did you start doing this?
I was working at a place called the Duplex Nursing Home in Boston, and there was an elderly man there. He was in good health one day. The next day he took sick, was in the hospital, and he had died. He lived a long life, and I asked around to see if anybody wanted to go to the funeral then, and there was one man who did, a man by the name of Arthur Wallace. So I borrowed a car. I pulled in, introduced ourselves to a couple of distant relatives of the deceased, and there was the minister. The minister then said his brief eulogy, and when he was through with that, he then asked if anybody else wanted to say anything. And of course, Arthur Wallace did. Arthur Brown was a good man, but the funny thing was he didn't like bananas. When his tray would come up for lunch, if there was a banana on it, he'd give it to me. Now, I like a banana okay. A banana is my number 2 fruit. My number 1 fruit is a big, mild pear. I started doing this project, the Duplex Planet, in 1979. And it started out as a little periodical, and then that became books, and was adapted into a comic book for a while, and I started doing slightly more elaborate monologues where there was music. When I was 8 years old, I made First Holy Communion, and I was first in my class to have an accordion-pleated dress. It was a dress that was all pleated, and when I swung around, that dress would fly. I did that over at church one day, and Sister scolded me. She said, "That's a sin to do that." And I said, "No, it isn't. I swung for God." So that took care of her. My mother always said, "You're going to get in trouble someday. You talk too much." I says, "No, Mama, that's how you get to be smart." Also, I always knew when to fall back and let the next guy take over.
That one felt good.
That was good? Okay.
All right.
Sometimes people aren't quite sure what it is that I do, and so their description, perhaps people who work at the places, will assume that I'm coming around to collect oral history. And so they'll say, "Well, this guy's coming, he's here from New York State, and he wants your stories." And then people feel like, "Well, I don't have any stories."
I don't know what these questions are for. What are all these questions for? What are all these questions for?
Just to get to know people and see what they think about. I'm going around to different places. I'm out here through the university doing a project where I come around to different sites like this, different facilities, and talk to people and see what kinds of things they think about and what they remember and what they're doing now. Things like that.
That's not very interesting.
It doesn't make sense to say there's a guy coming, he's just going to sort of hang out and chat. So I understand that it gets explained in ways that aren't quite right. This one guy said, "You're the best doctor here." So I find a spot where I can set up and talk with people, a little table off somewhere, sometimes in another room where there's no distractions. And I talk to people for anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour.
I know I wear the red shirt.
You still wear that?
I still wear it.
Yeah. You look like a king.
Yeah.
You looked like a king that day.
Eh?
A king.
King of the road.